Mind?
Absolutely. Thank you, Simona. Hello, everyone. My name is Lynette Austin, and I'm bringing you greetings from New York. First, I am a proud patient. I'm a proud patient of medical cannabis in the states of New York and New Jersey. Second, I'm an advocate for both the plant and inclusion of this industry. And third and finally, I work in this industry. I started as actually team member number 3 for our Curaleaf New York operations. God, almost 4 years ago. Time is really going by fast. At the time, I was head of HR and outreach, dual roles for that New York operations, where my focus was really on hiring for that vertically integrated, that seed to sell operations. And within outreach, I oversaw the education of the plant, the industry, the medical program, and our company to future patients, community members, and practitioners. So currently, I'm actually the Director of Talent Management and Diversity here at Curaleaf, where my focus is on performance management and fostering inclusion. Thank you, Marijuana Matters, for hosting today.
Thank you for being here. And definitely last but not least, Kate, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate Steinberg. I started with Curaleaf 5 years ago, right as I finished graduating college. I started as a part-time dispensary associate at our New Jersey location. And 5 years later, I have the joy of being the analyst on the corporate social responsibility team at corporate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. And definitely thank you to Curaleaf for powering this conversation. We appreciate this collaboration and being able to bring events like this so individuals, especially those most impacted, are able to learn more in terms of ways to plug into the industry. This very much, again, is a talk about employment, but we would absolutely be remiss if we didn't first, I just want to throw this out there just to get reactions from the panelists. If you wouldn't mind just sharing your thoughts on what recently happened in the sports news, Olympic news, right, with Sha'Carri. And that's for anyone who can speak to or would like to speak to it at this time, at least to update our audience on, what has happened and just some of the ways we can look at this.
It's definitely, I'll speak really quickly, Lynette here, very fresh. For those that don't know, that Sha'Carri already making history and being a candidate going into the Olympics is now being told she cannot run because she tested positive for cannabis for the Olympic drug test. And so honestly, I'm very, very, as many of my colleagues and friends and industry members are furious, we're livid. It's extremely infuriating, especially because we work in this industry. I would just really simply put and say that it feels like some people in the Olympics committee need to be today listening to this discussion. They need a Cannabis 101. They need some education, and hopefully we can see a better outcome from what we currently see right now. That's all I have.
I would just add that from my perspective, I feel this is just yet another set of barriers that's been put systematically in our country to affect certain people in a certain way. Athletes are no different from anyone else. I mean, we're literally fighting the same fight in the employment side of cannabis, where if you have a certain charge or a certain criminal background, you're not allowed to actually come into this cannabis industry. It's the exact same thing that she's going through as a barrier. And it's meant to target certain populations. So I think it's systemic, and I think we need to all band together to fight it.
No, absolutely. And are there any other panelists who would like to just speak on it? And even those of you who are watching, so feel free to also use the chat.
Well, this is more personal, but prior to my even knowing who she ever was, one of the ways that I came to know her was her style, which is obviously a sore thumb for everyone. So once they couldn't bring her down because she maintained her integrity and she maintained her performance throughout all of the complaints and the what have you. So as far as I'm concerned, having, kind of followed her, I feel like, when you're looking for something, you can always find it. I'm going to end right there. You can always find it.
And I think, sadly, many of us who are definitely participating, and some that are watching, I'm sure they know exactly what you mean, Mary, and even what, Lynette shared and Shawnee. So thank you for sharing, your immediate reactions, because it is still fresh, right? And it will be a continuing or evolving, right, issue that we'll have to continue to tackle when it comes to outdated, practices and policies. So thank you for at least, feeling comfortable enough, right, with us to share. We appreciate that. So I'm going to jump right in now to the topic at hand. And I think some of you already touched on this. And I know, Mary, I think you've been doing what you do for quite some time, but if, especially those who are more recent into the cannabis industry, if you wouldn't mind sharing why you decided to switch lanes to the cannabis industry and what that transition looked like for you, that would be great, just so we can have, that general convo.
Okay, well, I've been switching lanes all of my career, so I'm a pretty good lane switcher, and I say that because it pretty much, I love the versatility. I love being able to increase my level of skill, my ability to talk to people in general. But really, I switched this lane and plan to stay in it for as long as I'm able, because of my own personal. Like Lynette, I had a medical condition that it started off as really back issues, and so I was taking products in for that, and then I ended up having breast cancer. So with my own digging, and I went down a lot of rabbit holes, a lot of them, without knowing really, because I'm one of those people that just believe that I need to know what it is I'm doing here. So as I started going down the rabbit hole, I began to realize, wait a minute, and I went back and I looked at the history. So without, stretching it out, I will say that my challenge was a little different because I'm also in ministry. And so the first thing I thought about was like, oh my God, I will be blackballed. I will be, throw the baby out with the bathwater, you kind of thing, because of where I stand with my opinions about this plant. And I even did some biblical studies. We're not going to go there, but I just want to say that if God made the endocannabinoid system, and then he turned around and made a plant that is lock and key to the endocannabinoid system, I'm thinking he pretty much knows what he's doing. That's just my thought. But on the other side of that, as I began to educate myself, I realized that, hey, you're an educator. You need to be out there on that front line educating, and I know how to educate well, to adult learners, and which is what we're dealing with. And so I kind of began to find my niche with that. And so, it started out personal. It still is personal, because I just feel like the biggest issue that we have is people just don't know this plant, period. And if we don't start there, and I think, Simona, you and I had this conversation, if you don't start there, this whole game is lost. I mean, we got to educate people. We have to educate people on both lines. And I know I'm going on and on, but I do find that people in my class, they come with the perspective of, well, I'm going in it because I use it. What skill do you have? What do you bring to the table? And so at the end of the day, I think the education starts there. Why are you really coming in? So that's, my passion for education, my passion for seeing people be educated about what it is they're doing is what brought me here.
That's so wonderful to hear. And again, thank you for responding to that, because you're absolutely right. The fact that you are a nurse, you're an educator, but you've also been switching lanes so much, you have that skill set, right? and just reminding folks to think about, okay, what are the skills that you bring to the table? Any other panelists like to respond to this question in terms of just sharing maybe, just why you switched lanes or how it happened?
I'll jump in from here. So I have a similar story to Miss Mary, I would say, in the sense of one, switching lanes is something that I've done. Like again, I've worked in pretty much different fields and parts of the pharmacy world, but pharmacy as an industry, as a profession, is pretty old. So there aren't that many opportunities to be at the forefront of something new. So that was one thing that really excited me about being in the cannabis space, right? Not that cannabis is new as a medicine, we've been using it as a medicine for a very long time, but it's like a resurgence of using it. It's a great opportunity to be at the forefront of something. And then also in the same breath, I think pharmacists are some of the most accessible health professionals, right? You can walk into a pharmacy, ask a pharmacist a question, and that's what I really loved about my job. So it's talking to patients, educating patients, and I think it's important, especially when it comes to cannabis. The education piece is extremely important because that's the way that we can help to remove the stigma and demystify and deprogram some of the things that have been taught over the last few decades, almost a century now, about this plant. And I think that's really important. And then the last piece for me, and this is the same reason why I've been in healthcare for I've stayed in healthcare as long as I've had, is representation, right? There aren't that many African Americans in the healthcare field, right? When you look at pharmacists, less than 4% of us, right, are Black. And then if you look at the cannabis industry, right, there is not many of us as well. So to have the opportunity to represent not only health professionals in this space, to help legitimize this space and remove the stigma, and then also represent people of color, there's no way I was going to pass that up while helping to, change people's thoughts and paradigms on the plant. So every day at Curaleaf, I get to teach patients about the endocannabinoid system, about medications, how it works, how it can help them maybe transition some things that they were using for their symptoms, and it's great. It's a great opportunity. It's a great to help people, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah.
I can quickly go next right after Dr. Duclos. And really, I was so interested in coming into this industry. I saw it as a new opportunity to build the ground, right? Build this whole thing from the ground up. Something that would be different from what at the time was my current environment of being that typical corporate culture, if you will. But my entire life, very much like Nurse Mary, I was so nervous and so timid about being able to be a proud cannabis user or going to the industry, right? We talk about the religious aspect. And as soon as I always remember, right, the Bible says, follow the laws of the land. We will spare you all the rest of the preaching. But I was like, well, it's legal and I work in HR. So here we go. We're going to infuse these two together. I just remember being able to just be so fascinated to see something that was different. At the time, the president of our New York operations was a woman, and I was reporting to a woman. And the fact that I have gone 10 plus years in corporate America, and I have never had a supervisor that was a female until I came into this industry. I know, right? First of all, what? Exactly. That's corporate America. And the fact is that right there, I was like, there's a female president of an operation. Okay, I already start to see this is something different. And I wanted to be a part of and bring what I felt. I've always been different from a typical corporate environment. And that's what really drew me initially to this industry.
Thank you, Lynette, so much for just sharing that, and hearing from Mary and Dr. Duclos and the passion that you have for being in an industry and just for helping people and to be good beacons of information. It's just really comforting to hear. I am wondering, too, when we think about employment and what brought us to this industry, I'm kind of going to pivot and ask Shawnee, if you wouldn't mind speaking to, just representation of what are the job possibilities, right? That are possible in this industry. If you wouldn't mind just sharing just what that looks like and possible trends even.
Yeah, I think a lot of people initially, when they hear about the cannabis industry, they automatically think dispensary. And that's kind of like one of the um, the misconceptions that I think we're trying to help raise awareness about, because the dispensary level is literally just like the surface of the cannabis industry. And so as far as job opportunities go, whatever you can conceive as far as an industry, the cannabis industry has it. So whether that's being an accountant or an analyst or a marketing specialist or social media manager, a lawyer, someone who works in compliance and risk management, retail management, inventory management, growing, trimming, biology, chemistry, construction, human resources. Literally, there is a place for you in the cannabis industry. And so really trying to like help raise that awareness so people understand that you don't necessarily have to go and be a bud tender to get in the industry. You may be able to do something else based on your current skill set and your past experience, your past career experience in the cannabis industry right now. I can't express how many times I've had candidates come up to me and say, I want to be a bud tender. And they're like 20 years into their career doing something highly specialized, like HVAC. Like I've had someone in HVAC walk up to me and say they want to get in the cannabis industry. And I'm like, as a bud tender, like we need you in HVAC, like in the cannabis industry right now. So the trends, obviously the number of jobs, it's growing every year. As more and more markets come online, I think people need to really be looking at the other opportunities outside of plant touching. So we all know that you can work at a dispensary, you can work at a cultivation center, you can work at a processing center, but you could also work in a back office role. You could also work for a business that supports that processing center, or a business that supports that retail operation, or a business that supports that processing operation. You could work for a laboratory that tests cannabis. There are so many options. So I think that's the main thing. The main thing I want people to kind of pull from when they're thinking about the cannabis industry is to kind of think outside the box, look at what your experience is, and then apply that to the cannabis industry.
No, that totally makes sense. Thank you so much, Shani, for just giving that that level of detail just in terms of what's possible. I feel like, Jordan, I just want to make sure, I might maybe saw your mic off mute. If you wanted to just share, just so folks have some understanding of like your backstory, feel free to hop on in here.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say it's been similar to Lynette and Kate and probably everyone here. When I first joined, there was a lot fewer people in the industry, and it's been incredible to see how many new roles have come into the cannabis industry. I know when I started at Select, there were like 120 folks at the company, and now with Curaleaf and after the Grassroots acquisition, we're at like 4,800, almost 5,000 team members just at Curaleaf now, and that's a new number in like the last 2 weeks. Just to give you a sense of growth over 4 years, it's pretty incredible. I was also going to say that I left my creative agency job to find cannabis. Specifically, I worked with a client to throw a conference called What's the Fix? And it was a patient-focused healthcare conference. And it was the first experience I had in healthcare where cannabis was a part of the conversation. And that was in 2017. And as soon as I heard it in that sort of application, I was just like, I got to leave healthcare. I got to go to cannabis. And I mean, cannabis and healthcare are obviously very connected. But that's sort of my story of what signified for me that it was an evolving industry and ready for someone, a full-time PR person, to join a company that was, there weren't very many of us at the time. Probably similar to Lynette, there weren't a lot of full-time HR folks at a cannabis company. There was probably a lot of cannabis companies that had someone working many different roles. And Lynette, I know you were doing many different jobs when you first started as well, but it's just been incredible to see all the specialized roles come into play.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Jordan. And I'm going to pick on Kate also, maybe if you want to share, because I know your background and a little bit just because of the prep meetings that you shared in terms of how you did kind of get into the industry. Yeah, hop on up and just share a little bit with folks in terms of like your lane switch and what that looked like and navigating the industry.
Yeah, so this also kind of like leads into the next question that you were going to ask about, advice that I have, and the two words I think of are persistence and patience. So I was getting ready to graduate from Drexel University in Philadelphia, and like many other soon-to-be graduates, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had psychology and culinary arts under my belt. I had this like big dream of doing culinary therapy. And then I realized what was really entailed with that. And so I was like, how else do I help people without having to do a whole bunch of research and do more college? Like, I want to help people now. And so that's when I was, chatting with my local smoke shop about my interest in CBD and cannabis. They let me know there was a dispensary that had opened up right down the road. And so I gave them a call right away. I spoke with the director of dispensary operations, told her I wanted to work there and make edibles. And she's like, cool, we don't have those in New Jersey. And I was like, okay, I want to be a dispensary associate. She's like, cool, we're not hiring, but we have an event tonight. And so I showed up with my resume. I showed up with a cover letter. And so at that point, we would actually do a monthly call so she could check up in on me and see what I had educated myself about regarding cannabis. And so that was in 2015. I became a patient. I started realizing, I thought you had to be like dead or dying to be a patient in New Jersey. And I didn't realize that I could be a patient with, my anxiety, depression, and back pain. And it changed everything for me. It was also the same time period where my sister had to be honorably discharged from the Army because of her Lyme disease. And so she too found cannabis and started working in the industry the same time that I did. And it really it was 6 months until I got the job. I was part-time for a full year, begging my colleagues to call out and take a break so I could take their shifts on. And then after 2 years of working at the dispensary, I wanted more. And so I actually picked up and relocated all the way to Massachusetts to be assistant manager at one of our new locations. And it kind of continued from there. But there were so many times where I got that no, not now. And I didn't take that as a no, I took that as a not yet. And so I think that's, I wanted to make a difference, and cannabis allowed me that opportunity. And I knew that I wasn't going to give up quite yet. I needed to push harder and harder to make it happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your backstory. It's definitely one of inspiration and just encouragement. So hopefully folks who are watching this again, you also have that same feeling, right? Does anyone else on the panel want to share advice they have again about navigating? I love that Kate started us off with two strong adjectives. So if you want to give your 2 or 3 in terms of advice, that would be wonderful.
First of all, Kate, it's an amazing story. I want to say that. But second thing is I think I just want to piggyback off of Kate's story, to be honest. The great thing about cannabis, I think the hardest thing may be getting in, right? Like finding a place where there's a job opening or something like that. But then the beauty of it is that because it's such a new industry and it's so small, our companies are still so small, you can really be the master of your own destiny, right? You just have to get here, figure out what you want to do, and then create your lane and create your path, whether that's within a company or something that you realize can be done on your own, right? But the only way to figure that out is by getting into the industry. So I think whatever opportunity you can, and like Shawnee said, within the realms of the skill set that you have, don't sell yourself short, find your way in, but then just make sure to build and connect with those to your left and to your right at work, above you, and figure out, how you can get to the next step, or what spaces can you fill, or how can you add value in a way that the company may not even be thinking about yet. I think that's one of the beauties of being in an industry that's still growing and figuring itself out. There is no right answer just yet, right? Aside from following whatever the regulations are, everything is a blank canvas. So I think that's the exciting part again. And for me, that was just be persistent. For me, before I was I've been at Curaleaf for about a year now. I was at another dispensary for about a year and a half, working per diem. So it was 1 day a week but just educating myself, practicing my consultations, figuring out, getting my experience while doing other things outside of work, but just building that experience up and networking at the same time. The wholesale person from Curaleaf used to come to our dispensary because they were selling us stuff. So building that relationship, is how I got the opportunity to even, interview for a full-time position at Curaleaf, right? So honestly, it's just about being persistent and taking whatever opportunities come your way. And then once you're in the door, I think the rest is really up to you. So.
I love that about relationships too. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to say, I think the piece on relationships is critically important, and just to keep your relationships close to you, because you never know when they'll be useful to you, or when you might be able to have a mutually beneficial business relationship, or really anything. And stay in touch with those people, even if you don't think you can work together now, maybe later you'll be able to. And also don't hesitate to reach out and ask people for favors or questions or advice. I think that all of us on this panel would probably say that we're sort of an open door. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'll respond to you, and I'll even take a phone call with you. Let's talk, whatever. Don't be afraid to do that.
That is so refreshing to hear. And that's exactly what I was the very words I was going to say, just to elevate Dr. Duclos, you said them. So thank you for that.
I was going to say the confidence. And so I was listening to Kate, I was listening to Jordan, Lynette, Dr. Duclos. Oh my gosh, Shani, one of the things that I can see, it's just a thread, and it's confidence. So you have a skill. You got to be confident in what you do. If you haven't figured it out, it's time to start figuring out what is it that you're really good at. And you might just go and list some things. For me, I knew I was good in education. I was good as a nurse, but I was better as an educator because I was, what we call in my world, birthing people out into that career. So you're training people, and you're getting the product that you want to see. But I was confident in that. So the confidence is really, really key. And then finding your skill set and not trying to, and I said it the other day, get in somebody else's lanes. If you don't know how to drive in the fast lane, stay over in the slow lane. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And you have to recognize it. And when you get into an area that is new to you, guess what? If you're not comfortable, everybody else around you recognizes that you don't know what you're doing. And you won't go up the ladder like Kate, like Lynette, like Dr. Duclos. You will just sit right there in that one spot. Well, I've been here 25 years and you're still a clerk in the same. I think the evaluation has to be of you at that point. And it's a soapbox. That's the educator in me coming across. But know what you can do and then sell yourself as to what you can do.
I think it has to do with the passion. I think the cannabis industry is really, really tough. And a lot of people, I don't think, realize that. I teach an entrepreneurship class, and in one of the sections, I tell them when I first started out how many hours a week I was working. They were like, "What were you doing?" But I was being honest, so that people come into the industry with an expectation of what it takes to really get to that next level. It's not a cakewalk at all. And so I think when you come into the cannabis industry, it has to be something you're passionate about. And so for me, I've always been passionate about connecting people to their dream job, their dream career, so they can have the greatest employee experience. And I like thinking back on this, I probably, like, if I had gone another route and like decided I wanted to do a dispensary or something like that, or work at a dispensary, I probably would have hated my job. But I love what I do, and I'm very passionate about what I do. And that's a huge portion of surviving in this industry day to day.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest fan of the phrase "fake it till you make it." I prefer "face it till you make it." I think that at the end of the day, one of the biggest moments in adulthood for me was hearing somebody on our senior leadership team head into a meeting and say, I have no idea what I'm doing right now. And that to me was like, holy cow, so it's okay that I feel this way sometimes. I think that it's like Shawnee said, it's holding on to the passion and knowing that you're doing this with the right intent. And that even if you don't have all the confidence in the world, you're going to learn it. We all, every single one of us starts somewhere. And I've told the patients the same thing when they act surprised that we all know so much is we all had to learn how to walk. We all had to learn how to run. And the best way to start is by starting, you know, so start somewhere, reach out to us on LinkedIn. Like you've got people who are happy to give you advice and, you know, you've got so many people supporting you, you know, just got to start somewhere.
If I can quickly add to that, Simona, what Kate is saying, what all my colleagues are here is saying, I echo 1000%. And what here, we're really talking about some real things here, where you have a team here that you have for advice to ask questions with, right? It's about the networking, the relationship, exactly what everyone is saying about that passion. But let me also remind everyone here, and that is also, it's about the research. We need you to do the research and look into, we have to approach this industry as if you were getting ready to take a job overseas. We speak a different language, and building these relationships and networking and having your current skill set absolutely can transition to here, but it can be squandered the moment you come into that interview and opportunity and you are not talking the same language and you're using weed and we're talking about cannabis as a plant and you're like, I'm applying for marketing and we're going to post this everywhere, and you don't know that the current laws for that state, again, it's not one blanket rule across the industry, and you don't know that you can't have an Instagram page with something on it, or you can't, whatever. There's so many loops and issues and layers of this complex industry, and that honestly can make or break if you were going to go to that next step by what you say. We know what you're talking about. Even when I'm on the phone or getting a LinkedIn, right, conversation going on, it's so important that you take that first step. It's boring, but understand you go to that DOH, to that state, and if you're applying for a national role, yes, you are going to look at every single state law. So you are talking and speaking the same language. You know about the qualifying conditions that people need to know. You need to know that at any position you work at for any cannabis company, because it absolutely is going to go into what you do, how you do. And that also for the employer goes, this learning curve, whew, is going to be much shorter, because they know that you got to see a doctor first, and it has to be this kind of doctor, and then you got to get this. So you're not coming in ideas thinking you're getting ready to get this marketing job and get people in the door the same way you did at Starbucks. That's not the case. So understand, it's a whole different language. It's a whole different landscape, and that is all available to each and every person as public information. So I say, do the research, do the research, do the research. And be able to speak the language when you're coming in, having these conversations in this industry.
Thank you, Lynette. That is everything you said was needed to be heard. So thank you. You know, and it's funny because one of the questions that was submitted from one of the audience members was just in respect to you, like, so is it necessary, right, to obtain a certificate of completion, to take online courses, to be able to work in the cannabis industry? But what I almost hear you saying, if you or anyone on the panelists can just address this part, like how much education is necessary? Is it formal education that's necessary? It can be done, you know, on your own. And, you know, what's that baseline, you know, medical knowledge about the plant that you need to have to really be successful in the industry?
I don't think there's a cookie cutter. Oh, sorry. I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer to that question. Everyone's path is really, really different and unique. And so it's very possible that someone could educate themselves and really lay the foundation for themselves to get in the right rooms with the right people and meet the right opportunities. But that doesn't mean that certificates and programs at colleges and universities and through cannabis companies around the US aren't beneficial as well. That also doesn't mean that going to conferences and expos, meeting people on workshops and certain, you know, educational events around the country or in your market isn't helpful at all. So I think everyone, depending on your skill set, what you're trying to do in the industry, what your end goal is, what your capacity is as far as how much you want to invest in yourself for your education. I think that's more kind of along the answer. So it's not the same for everyone.
Yep. Oh, exactly what Shani is saying. It is specific to the state, to your actual role. So take example for New York, to be a dispensary manager in that position, you have to be a licensed pharmacist and have your medical cannabis CME. Like that is non-negotiable, right? Same thing for Pennsylvania, same thing for Connecticut, where it may be different for someplace else. And so I think it's so important, again, exactly as Shani's saying, to one, do the research, but see what role you're applying for and see if that is a requirement. But I will say, if it's not, there's so many different institutions and opportunities that are out there for you to take advantage on, because the more you know, again, it's learning that language is going to help you with this, with any role in the industry.
Yes, I would also add that beyond the baseline education of, cannabinoids, terpenes, what is the plant, what is cannabis prohibition done to Black, Indigenous, and people of color, what does that look like? Also staying up to date with the news. And obviously I'm a PR person, so that's important to my role, but cannabis news changes literally every day. Policies change every day. There's an evolution that you have to keep following and stay up to date with, even once you're in the industry.
Yeah, Jordan just took the words out of my mouth. There's that education you need on the way in, but then there's and from a healthcare standpoint, the continuing education that you have to do while you're in the industry. So just like there's news every day, there's also science that's being released every day, right? There are other countries that might be a little bit more ahead of the United States that are allowed to do research, that will release papers, they'll release stats, right? That we can then use as health professionals when we're speaking to our patients to speak with more confidence about, some of the results or similar results that they may see or other patients have seen in comparison to them, right? So I know for myself, like Nanette stated, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Ohio, they all have pharmacists involved in the process. For New York specifically, you have that CME course. But then myself, I went and bought like 7 books just on cannabis science and medicine, just to pick up things that weren't in that continuing education course or see what other things I could learn that would help to just add value when I'm speaking to patients and giving those consultations, and also speaking to physicians, right? So I think the education piece is extremely important. You just have to know yourself and what spaces you learn best in, right? Some people need structured environments, right? So I have friends who went to pharmacy school and now at University of Maryland's cannabis health education program, which is like the first one in the country. And there are folks who are just like me who just, kept reading and studying and joining organizations that also give education as well once you're a member, and that's the route for them. So it's really about what's best for you. Again, there is no cookie cutter way, and like I said before, so I agree with everybody else here.
So if I'm able, Dr. Duclaw, you said, in the healthcare field, we had a question, and that was kind of the title and impetus of this conversation, right? So it's talking about employment in generality, in the cannabis industry, but also trying to give some, meat for folks to understand what the industry is like. Can you, or really, again, anyone on the panel, but when we talk about the potential of looking at the role of a paraprofessional in the cannabis industry, what might that look like? Who are those folks?
So I can speak to myself and the profession that I'm in. I know as a pharmacist for New York, and luckily enough in New York, it's written into the regulations, right? Where the pharmacy or dispensary manager will be essentially the pharmacist in charge. And then they'll have another staff pharmacist on board. And the 2 of us will be the main health professionals there. Now, if you're a pharmacy technician and you're interested in the cannabis space, you can come in, but you'll be an associate. You won't be a pharmacy technician anymore. That doesn't mean that that's not going to change in the future, right? So it's just really about seeing, again, as Shawnee was saying, where your skills can parallel, the opportunities that are available, and then jumping right in. I'm not familiar with as many of the other states and what requirements they have. I know like Maryland, you're supposed to have like a clinical director, right? So they do want some type of clinician on board for their dispensary or for that company that can help with education for patients and for staff. So depending on where you are, it might be different, and your field may be intertwined with the regulations, but just figuring out what works in the market that you're in.
For me, and with me teaching medical cannabis, one of the biggest things is I currently I'm also employed doing dosage specialist for a CBD company, and one of the things that is really really key for me is it's e-commerce. So I'm across states, and I'm not employed as a dosage specialist as an RN. I am a member educator. And so that distinction needs to be out there because number one, I'm licensed. And so if I talk to someone on a phone and heaven forbid something happens, that doesn't make me legally liable. Whereas if I say, I'm a registered nurse and I'm giving you information as a registered nurse and you should do this and you should do that, and heaven forbid they don't do exactly what I said, and we all know that. But the other part of that is if something happens untoward and they decide they want to take me to court, guess what? They can take me to court because I am licensed. So the distinction between paraprofessional and professional has to do, one, as Dr. DeClaw said, with that licensing, but it also has to do with knowing what your scope of practice is. As far as your license is concerned. And I know for Illinois license is not going to cover me to do a dosage call with someone in Nebraska or Arizona. So, the member education role, I make it clear out the door as we start our conversation that I'm not here to give medical advice. And so you kind of set that expectation up. But also, the paraprofessionals that are in the position where they're giving the same information that I give, they have to be confident in giving it, and they also have to educate themselves at the same level that I'm educating myself to be able to teach and to be able to do dosage specialists. So I mean, there is a very, very, very gray line, but the demarcation is the licensing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback, Mary. Did anyone else want to just share their observations in terms or what they've learned in terms of the role and boundaries between licensed and non-licensed staff for those folks who are watching?
Hey, I'll quickly echo exactly what our medical experts on this panel are saying. And in my experience, when we're talking about the paraprofessionals, understand when we're talking about this industry and the opportunities to work, yes, exactly what Nurse Mary and Dr. Duclos, they are your licensed professionals there. And there's usually one of them on site. And you got to line out the door of patients and consumers who need to come in and get information, and they have questions and they need to know dosing, and they need to know, is this going to interact with my other current medications? And sometimes they will wait for that medical expert that has the license, and sometimes they can't. So therefore, the team members that are there to assist, they are your paraprofessionals. Understand that. They have to then do these patient consultations. They're talking about how this plant works in your body, right? They're helping you make decisions for your lifestyle and your health needs on behalf of what the medical professionals, trust me, have already trained them and done. That happens constantly. Then you take it a step further and you have an entire outreach team. Our field brand representatives that go out, and their responsibility is to educate the community about this product. And how do you do that without talking about, again, the science and how this product is made and what it's going to do to you? It is so important that we continue to have these conversations, because exactly how we opened up this panel, and these ignorant people on the Olympics committee, they're everywhere. And we do not continue to keep our paraprofessionals and our medical professionals in this industry, we're going to have more ignorance, because the only way we can combat that is with true facts and science and research and overall education. And so when we talk about this paraprofessionals, again, it's not just limited to your retail, it's anyone who is going to be giving information, giving education about this plant. So that's retail, that's marketing, that's PR, that's HR. Part of our onboarding at Curaleaf, absolutely, no matter what position, from a frontline to executive, retail to corporate, you are receiving training on a cannabis 101.
I'm gonna send you this.
We want you to know the difference between.
You're gonna listen to this later.
Is that me? Oh, sorry. We want you to know the difference between what a sativa is, what an indica is, understanding, right, what the difference between hemp and what we call marijuana, understanding those kind of things are basic information, because trust me, everyone who works in this cannabis industry and everyone on this panel and everyone on this call, as soon as we told our friends and family we work in this industry, what happened? All the questions came up. Oh, well, you know, I heard that I got some back pain. How am I going to get it, right? And this, and this. Oh, I have all of that. And so now you have to become that quick medical expert, which is AKA paraprofessionals, to be able to speak and educate your family about this product, about this plant, how it works. So really, we are all paraprofessionals, right, within this industry, because that is part of our role. I'm done. Thank you.
Love it. Dr. Duclos, did you want to chime in?
No, just the energy. Lynette, the energy is amazing. That's all I wanted to say.
I agree. Amazing.
Ditto.
Yeah, it's hard, Lynette. You make it really hard for somebody to follow you, which is not a bad thing. That's a beautiful thing.
That's not fair. You know how excited we are. We all work together all the time. And now Miss Mary is in here because we work already with her daughter, Shani, constantly all the time. But no, we're so passionate about this work. And it's so important that people understand it and get it, because we all have the best intentions. We want to be in this industry, which means it needs to be sustained and it needs to be able to grow in the right way, and understand this medical aspect and the education around this is crucial. For me, it's non-negotiable. So again, I applaud Marijuana Matters for having this topic tonight.
We appreciate you and every, the whole panel. Can't say it enough for taking the time out, because, you know, it was something that was, I think, alluded to a little bit earlier, and we definitely talked about it before on the prep call. You work a lot, right? The cannabis industry is no joke. So the level of intellectual and sweat equity that goes into the job, it's a lot. So thank you. I don't take that for granted for each of you being here. Just being mindful of time. I know we started a little bit late. I do want to just make sure that anyone who's live with us at this conversation, you have the opportunity to ask a question. Most certainly come on camera should you want to just share just reactions, right? Use your little, what do you call them, reactions, to give some feedback as well. And definitely before you go, we also have a poll, just to again know that you were here in the room to have documentation of that. But certainly at this time, I want to pass it over to those who are live to ask questions. And I did switch the view just again, so we can kind of all see each other. So if you're comfortable coming on camera, more than welcome to you, or you can place your question in chat.
Hi, my name is Melissa Gardner. I am the founder of Administrative Concierge Services, LLC, and I just wanted to say thank you to you all. I will be reaching out on LinkedIn because I just had the light bulb moment of, well, I do both creative, I do digital marketing, and why not do it in the cannabis industry? So I had a conversation with another young lady who owns a cannabis travel in Baltimore, where I'm in Maryland. And she was like, Melissa, we need you. You know, the industry needs what you have. So you all have just really confirmed for me that I am on the right track. So as I have been, you know, making some strides, I'm just encouraged to keep going and see that vision that I'm starting to form come to life. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for the information. And a couple of you I saw at the Canna Marketing Summit. And so thank you, Marijuana Matters, for that free ticket so that I was able to get that information as well. So I am educating myself so I can come in like gangbusters and help as much as possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, for being here. We really appreciate that and the feedback, just in terms of the information, just being a value to you. So thank you for that. And definitely for the young ladies who remain to the end, Victoria or Taylor, feel free to ask a question. If you don't, there are a few more that we have. Actually, one more I think that maybe we didn't touch on a little bit earlier, but it's just an opportunity to, close out with, like, if there are any resources you would like to share with us who are listening, either in person or digitally, or opportunities that you may be aware of that you just want to leave folks with. So that question goes out to the whole panel before we close. And again, if you are live with us, just stay to the very end so we can share that poll with you.
So I think one thing we would definitely want to share is the Rooted in Good initiative for Curaleaf and the Second Chance initiative specifically, in that we are trying to really break down the barriers of individuals who are just as impacted and getting them in the cannabis industry. And so if there's anyone that may be just as impacted in maybe some states that Curaleaf is licensed in and are interested in getting in the cannabis industry, please let them know that we're looking to create opportunities for that population.
And then linking up to what Shawnee said is, we also have our 420 by 25. So even if you don't want to work for Curaleaf, we're looking to bring on 420 diverse organizations or businesses or ancillary businesses as well. So this really lines up nicely with what you're hoping to do, Melissa, is, if we're working with a new printing company or a new swag company, or it's a colleague's birthday and we're getting them a birthday cake, we're looking to source from diverse owned businesses so we can, be really smart about the way that we're spending our money. We want it to go back into these diverse owned businesses so we can help support them.
I just want to quickly add from the resource point, and that is one of the best resources out there in the cannabis industry, and that's Curaleaf. Okay, all 100 plus of our brick and mortar locations, we have our website contact, but honestly, we have a team of medical professionals. We have team members that are dedicated to our patients, understand, again, the education and people who are working in this industry. We invite people, really, come on site, talk to the team, get to know. I will say some of the best education that I received, even from a medical standpoint, was becoming a patient myself, going through the journey and going through that and sitting down with my local pharmacist and learning about my healthcare needs and relearning cannabis. Understand, I knew cannabis, right? I didn't know it the way I know it now, but that is what it's about. So I encourage you, if you are a consumer, go through the legal process, right? Go through that medical process. It is a totally different experience. And we invite you into our space at Curaleaf. We do educational events. We do things virtually. There's so much constantly. We also are a resource. Thank you.
If you're interested in education on the medical side, on the science, if you're a health professional, Cannabis Pharmacy is a great book. That was like the first book I bought when I even knew I was getting my first job in the industry. And then there's also an organization, it's called ACHEM. So ACHEMED.org is the website, and they have like a lot of videos and trainings on their website as well. So it's another good opportunity there. And then again, like Lynette said, your local dispensary is a place to learn. There's people there with the knowledge, with the education. Curaleaf specifically, we are big on education, right? It's a major thing that we are about. So you can definitely find that within the company and from members of our organization.
Absolutely. So thank you, Shawnee. If you want to share a resource before we close out, feel free to do so. And if not, I just want to again thank I'm going to call it affectionately the Dynamic Six for a wonderful panel and discussion. It really was a good opportunity for folks, I think, to get to know each of you, for you to share your expertise and the important work that is being done by organizations like Curaleaf and Marijuana Matters. As a Rooted in Good partner, again, can't thank Curaleaf enough for this collaboration, because these are the conversations that will push us that further forward in the right direction and not do harm to those who have been historically disadvantaged. So we appreciate this opportunity and thank everyone watching today.